Hey everybody, I'm Sam Gross with electricbikereport.com, and this is the QuietKat Jeep. It's an all-terrain electric fat bike with a humongously powerful mid-drive motor, a full suspension design, and engineering behind it that lets it go where few e-bikes truly can ride comfortably. We're going to put this bike through its paces today to see how it performs in the real world, so stick with us and we're going to see how it does. QuietKat does make the Jeep in a street legal model, but the version that we're reviewing is not for use on public roads or public bike paths. It's for use in OHV areas or private land, really anywhere that you would use a non-street legal dirt bike. That's largely because it uses an absolutely monstrous 1,000-watt mid-drive motor from Bafang. It's the Bafang Ultra motor. That motor makes an astonishing 160 Newton meters of torque. And as far as I can tell, there's not much limit on how fast it'll go aside from its gearing. This thing is ridiculously fast, and it's super, super fun to ride in areas like we are here out on Bureau of Land Management land where you can ride a dirt bike or drive a side-by-side. This thing absolutely rips on Jeep roads, double track, 4x4 roads. It's really, really fun to ride. The Jeep is a member of a relatively enigmatic and kind of new category of e-bike. It's a category of e-bike that lives inside the gray area between electric bicycle and electric motorcycle. You're seeing motors like this one that's 1 kilowatt or 1,000 watts worth of power, which is quite a bit less than what we see from an electric dirt bike. Those are sometimes in the 3 to 5 kilowatt range, which are incredibly fast and powerful. And this thing is also relatively light, much more similar to the other electric fat bikes on the market. So what you get is a very powerful e-bike that's going to be capable and be able to go up and down things that not a lot of other e-bikes are capable of doing, but you're going to have the weight of a more typical electric fat bike. This one weighs in at 70 pounds. In addition to that, we're seeing a lot more serious mountain bike componentry with this bike. We have fairly legit suspension. It's a RockShox Monarch, a rear shock. It's an air shock, something that you'd see on a more competitive or aggressive mountain bike. And then you've also got an inverted front fork on this bike. This is something that is very unique to this category of e-bike, and we don't see too often. Usually mountain bike forks are the other way around. This one looks a lot more like a dirt bike fork. One of the reasons they do that is to stiffen up the front end of this bike. These 4.8-inch fat tires create a lot of rotational mass. It's a lot of mass to control as you're braking and cornering, and this inverted fork is fairly stiff and does a really fantastic job of handling that mass and making it change direction with ease. We're also seeing a SRAM X5 9-speed drivetrain, which, while it's kind of a lower to middle tier drivetrain from SRAM, it is a mountain bike drivetrain. It's going to be able to handle a lot of the force and the loads and give you good, crisp shifting on more technical terrain. We're also seeing Tektro Dorado 4-piston hydraulic disc brakes, which are enormously powerful, and they're also paired with 203mm disc rotors. Those rotors are the size of pie plates. I'm exaggerating a little bit here, but they're the rotors that you typically see on a racing downhill mountain bike where they need a lot of stopping power, just like the Jeep does. Overall, this thing is enormously fun to ride. QuietKat has put a lot of thought into the suspension design, the geometry design, and they've really made an e-bike that can just about go anywhere. Bikes like the Jeep were kind of born and bred out of the hunting category of e-bikes, where hunters and sportsmen needed something that was quieter than an ATV or a side-by-side to kind of discreetly get back into a stand or a hunting area, or just to get out into the backcountry, hence kind of this company's name of QuietKat. But companies like QuietKat quickly figured out that there was a very large market and a lot of interest in e-bikes that could just go into the backcountry and do things that not a lot of other e-bikes or traditional bicycles were capable of doing. that's where the Jeep came from. It's got those big fat tires, a very capable suspension design, and just really solid components paired with a absolutely monstrous mid-drive motor, and you've got a bike that's going to be able to take you pretty much anywhere you want to go, and it's a lot of fun to ride. QuietKat specs the Jeep with a 696 watt-hour or 48 volt, 14.5 amp-hour battery. Something to note about that battery is it's just not that large compared to the 1,000 watt mid-drive motor on this bike. Something to keep in mind, especially if you expect to be riding this thing in sport mode on the higher pedal assist levels. There's two different modes to choose from, Eco and Sport, each with 5 PAS levels. But if you're in sport mode a lot, and especially in those high PAS levels, expect to be burning through the battery very quickly on this bike. We saw evidence of that in our range test. We kept it in sport mode for both of our range tests because, let's be honest, if you are buying a bike like this, you're probably going to be riding it mostly in sport mode. But on PAS 5, this bike only made it 9.95 miles for just a little bit over 30 minutes of ride time. And then on PAS 1, we made it 33.61 miles for a couple of hours of ride time, but it was about in the ballpark of 2.5. So you're gonna burn through that battery very, very quickly in sport mode. We have spent some time in eco mode, playing with different pedal assist settings there. There's no formal range tests, and we do see a more economical battery expenditure there, but this is just a powerful e-bike. I would really highly suggest, especially if you're intending on taking this thing into the backcountry in places that are hard to get in and out of, potentially even buying a second battery for it. QuietKat does sell secondary batteries. It might be a worthwhile investment for a bike like this. The QuietKat Jeep is spec'd with a set of Tektro Dorado hydraulic disc brakes, and these are a 4-piston hydraulic disc brake, which means they're going to be more powerful than the more standard 2-piston hydraulic disc brakes. And that's especially true when you consider that they're paired with a set of 203mm disc brake rotors, which is the size of brake rotor we often see on downhill racing mountain bikes. Those bikes require a lot of stopping power. So does this QuietKat Jeep. So we're going to put it to the test today to see how much stopping power it actually has. How we're going to do that is we bring the bike up to 20 miles an hour 5 times and then slam on the brakes as hard as possible. We're going to take the average of those 5 stopping distances, and that is the result of our brake test. So let's put the QuietKat Jeep to the test and see how it performs. The QuietKat Jeep stopped very well in our braking test with an average stopping distance of 14 feet and 4 inches. That's above our current average of all of the bikes we've tested in our brake test so far, which is about 15 feet, 11 inches or 10 inches, somewhere in that ballpark. So 14 feet 4 inches is a good result, especially from this relatively heavy and very powerful electric fat bike. Now, a lot of its good stopping distance is going to be chalked up to those Tektro Dorado 4-piston hydraulic disc brakes, and they are 203mm disc brake rotors. But one thing I'll note is that these CST roly-poly 4.8-inch tires don't hook up super duper well, at least in braking, hard braking conditions, on asphalt. Now, these tires are specifically designed for off-road use. They're super aggressive tread, and because of that super aggressive tread, we actually don't have a ton of rubber contacting the ground at any given time, at least on asphalt. There's nothing for it to grip into. So it's not terribly surprising when this bike started to skid quite a bit on me. I have a feeling though that once we get this bike on dirt, it's going to hook up spectacularly well because of those tires. I actually know that because I've tested these tires off-road before. But great braking results so far from the QuietKat Jeep. The 1,000-watt motor that QuietKat has spec'd on the Jeep is enormously powerful. It's going to be a theme throughout this entire review, is just how powerful this e-bike is. It makes 160 Newton meters of torque, which makes it just an astoundingly capable hill climber. But in areas like this, where we are out in the desert and we have a lot of slick rock down here in southern Utah, it makes the bike very grunty and capable on steep stuff. We have a lot of steep pitches, loose pitches, big rock gardens that you have to get through, and this bike handles all of that very, very well. And it really is because it's got the suspension setup, the geometry, and more importantly, the power to just kind of mash through anything that you would throw at it. Bear in mind, I'm going to say this one more time, this is not a street legal model. You can order it with a 750 watt mid-drive motor. This one is designed specifically for OHV use. I would imagine you'd largely get a lot of the same performance out of that 750 watt motor, but this one is just so fast and so fun on these wide open dirt roads. It, in a lot of respects, reminds me of the days that I used to spend out in the desert on a dirt bike, just cruising around. It makes it up steep stuff very easy. It's very grunty and fun. We did put this bike to the test around our circuit. We do a lap for each pedal assist level plus one with the motor entirely off. As you'd expect from a 70-pound full suspension electric fat bike, that lap with the motor entirely off was not that fun. I think we averaged around 13 miles an hour. But once we kicked the motor off and we did all of these tests in sport mode, starting in PIS1, we saw an incredible amount of help from that mid-drive motor. Doing a lap in PIS1 at about 18 miles an hour, I think it was 18.4 miles an hour, which is one of the fastest PIS1 laps we've ever recorded around our circuit. PIS5 was north of 24.4 miles an hour, which again, one of the quickest laps we've ever put around our circuit. A really, really fast, really, really fun e-bike. Handling-wise, the QuietKat Jeep is a very, very stable, very impressively balanced e-bike, especially on some of this more technical terrain that we're putting it through today. It handles it like a champ, and a lot of that is due to how QuietKat designed its suspension and how they carefully chose that inverted front fork. I cannot stress how much that fork design makes a difference on an electric fat bike, especially when you're trying to push the envelope of what it can do off-road. It makes it much more stiff. Almost, it feels weird describing it like this because that fat tire is just so big. It feels a little bit like a scalpel in corners. I don't get any sort of wallowy sensation. You just dive it in, drive it through, and the bike stays on line. They also spent a lot of time designing the 4-bar suspension linkage in the back end, which is a very, very impressively functional suspension design, something that we don't often see in the electric fat bike category, but this is not an affordable e-bike. They've put a bunch of engineering expertise into that back end and very carefully chosen the suspension components. But other than that, this is a large e-bike. It's long, it's low, it rides a lot like a kind of a free ride or enduro mountain bike. It's very, very good at handling choppy stuff, rough stuff. You do sometimes notice the weight, especially at lower speeds. Like let's say in this double track, if I was to do a U-turn, I'm definitely gonna have to put a foot down and kind of make sure I've got the bike under control. But other than that, once you're up at speed and riding it, it really rides like a much lighter and smaller bike. It's very capable and fun. Cockpit-wise, you've got a fairly standard e-bike cockpit. The display is from Bafeng. You have two different modes to choose from, Eco and Sport. You can toggle between those modes and all the PIS settings using the touchpad on the left-hand side. It's fairly standard. One thing that is not standard though is we do see fairly wide handlebars. That's something again kind of taken from the mountain bike world and put onto this bike. Those wide handlebars help with the stability and the cornering capability and just kind of getting in that athletic stance on the bike going through more technical terrain. The QuietKat Jeep comes with a 1,000-watt Bafeng Ultra mid-drive motor that produces 160 Newton meters of torque. That makes this far and away the most powerful motor we've ever tested on our test hill, Hellhole. I have a feeling it's going to go up the hill extremely fast. 160 Newton meters of torque and 1,000 watts of available power is just a huge amount of energy. And while this is a heavy e-bike, I'm not sure its weight is going to play too huge of a factor in our hill test. So let's put it to the test on Hellhole and see how it performs. All right, this is the throttle-only test of the QuietKat Jeep. Got a 1,000-watt motor. should probably have no issues on this hill. You're gonna see me pedal every once in a while, and that's to shift. Basically just soft pedaling to get the gear to change. Matters a lot with these mid-drive motors. This has got to be one of the quickest throttle tests we've ever done. This motor definitely makes a lot of noise. Hello. So just insanely powerful. $1,000-watt motor uphill is just insane. Very much in line with what I was thinking. The QuietKat Jeep is definitely one of the fastest climbing e-bikes we've ever put to the test on Hellhole. On the throttle only test, it cleared the top in 1 minute and 8 seconds with an average speed of 16 miles an hour. And then PAS5 in sport mode, it cleared the top in 55 seconds with an average speed of 19.7 miles an hour. Those are eye-watering times and speeds on a hill that is 1/3 of a mile long and a 12% gradient on average. And in fact, I know according to just looking at my own Strava results that it's almost a record in PAS5, and it very well might be a record on the throttle only test. Just an incredible amount of power from this thing. Bear in mind, you're going to be eating away a ton of battery life by doing climbs in those pedal assist settings, but this bike between the eco and the sport modes has a total of 10 PAS settings to choose from, so you're going to be able to manipulate that battery life quite a bit. But I know doing it in PAS5 and then in the throttle only in sport mode, I ate away almost 15% of the bike's battery just doing those two tests. So really astonishingly good results from this bike. The QuietKat Jeep has been a really interesting e-bike to spend time on, mostly because I really haven't ridden much like it before. There's not a lot of these out there. There's a few other companies that are making really powerful, well done, full suspension electric fat bikes, but the QuietKat Jeep really is kind of the pinnacle of all of them. They've put a lot of design, a lot of thought into it, and I have to be honest, with my background as a traditional mountain biker, I saw this thing, and like a lot of the other fat bikes that I review and look at, I looked at it with an eye of skepticism. I really had doubts on how well it was going to perform off-road. It's just big, it's got huge tires, there's a lot of weight to throw around, and that mid-drive motor is so powerful that there are moments where it's almost unwieldy. But QuietKat has done a really great job of packaging all of that together in something that is very, very functional. It's also interesting because QuietKat and the other companies that are making bikes like this, they're pretty much pioneering a new category of e-bike. It's one of those examples of, before e-bikes existed, bikes like this never would have been made. It would have been too heavy, too unwieldy to make sense. but throw that 1000 watt or even the 750 watt mid-drive motor on there, and boy is it a lot of fun. It crosses the line between taking the handling of a enduro mountain bike and some of the power, not all of the power, but maybe a quarter of the power of a light-duty off-road dirt bike, and they put it together and they've made something that's really, really cool and really, really fun. I can totally see people buying this thing to rip around on Bureau of Land Management roads, forest roads, or even to take it to Moab and go and do some of the more famous 4x4 roads out there. Actually, QuietKat has made quite a few videos of them doing exactly that, and they're pretty cool to watch and pretty good examples of how people can use an e-bike like this. Me personally, I've had a ton of fun reviewing this bike. It's just something that's so unique and so new and so different, and just kind of exciting to see what they're doing and how they're pushing the envelope with what you can do with an e-bike. If you've enjoyed our review of the QuietKat Jeep, be sure to like and subscribe to our channel for more updates on QuietKat and the other brands that we cover. And if you want to know more about the Jeep and the data we collected on it, be sure to click the link in the description below this video for more detailed written review. For Electric Bike Report, I'm Sam Gross. Thank you so much for watching.